Welcome to Community of Christ podcast, Faith Unfiltered. My name is Susan Oxley, and I'm your host today for this episode of Climate Brewing, which is a series that focuses on the climate change and the kind of solutions that can help mitigate the climate emergency that we face. I'm recording from Seattle, Washington with my friend, Sally Eales. Sally is one of the members of our pastorate team at Renton Community of Christ. She's been a vegan for many years, and now her husband David is also a vegan. And Sally agreed to explore that topic with me. Now, what does veganism have to do with climate? Well, there's been a lot of information in the media and in discussions about how cows burp out methane gas. Methane gas is known to be one of the carbon emissions that goes into the atmosphere, blankets the earth, and holds the heat that otherwise would dissipate into the atmosphere, into space. And so cows and their burping behavior has been linked to global warming. Many people are concerned about that increase in methane, but cows are not the only source, of course. There's a whole lot of other sources. And so one of the arguments for going vegan is to decrease the cow population by eating less meat. That's one of the links between veganism and climate change. So let's get right into the topic. Let's just talk about being a vegan. When did you first decide to go vegan and why?
Well, first of all, I would like to kind of clarify a couple of terms. And we use the word vegan partly because it's well known. And but I want to distinguish between being vegan and also be what I prefer is to be plant-based. And vegan is a phrase that was coined in 1944 by Donald Watson and Dorothy Morgan because they wanted to distinguish themselves from vegetarians. And vegetarians will eat dairy and meat, dairy and eggs, no meat, where Donald Watson and Dorothy Morgan, which was his partner, really, they had decided they didn't want to eat any animal products. So they took the word vegetarian, they took the first three letters of the word vegetarian and the last two, and they made the word vegan. And so vegans don't eat any animal products, but it also is deeper than that. They also won't use any animal products. They won't, it's more for ethical reasons. They will not use leather and those types of things. Plant-based, on the other hand, was a phrase that started to be used in 1980 by T. Colin Campbell after he was a researcher at Cornell University, and he coined that phrase plant-based. And then others came along and they popularized the whole thing of whole food plant-based. And that movement was really just focused on personal health. And so that's really what I would consider myself as being as somebody who is plant-based. And now if we take both of those terms, vegan and plant-based, they both exclude meat and dairy and eggs. But like I said, usually vegans are more motivated by animal and ethics rights, and where plant-based usually are motivated by personal health. So back to your question, Susan.
Well, first of all, thank you for those definitions and for making that very clear. There's really three different terms there that we tend to interchange, whether it's right or wrong.
Well, and most of the time if people say, oh, I see you're vegan, if they're just asking a casual, conversation, they notice I don't eat meat, I'm going to say yes. Now, if they want to know more about it, then I would go into more of an explanation that I just did right there. T. Colin Campbell also wrote the book China Study, and he also did a huge study that was called the China Project, the China Study Project. And so those are the phrase. But I actually became interested in veganism in the 90s when I started looking at some of the issues of world hunger. And I started noticing our increased appetite for animal flesh, particularly in the United States. But as I looked into it, it started to become more in all industrialized countries where people just seem to eat more and more and more meat. And as we started eating more and more meat, we were using more and more of our resources to produce that meat. And I became very concerned that this may not be a sustainable practice. And of course, in our church, we are called to be good stewards. We're called to be, to have dominion over this earth. And I think that says we need to use our intelligence that God gave us to make sure that we are using those resources appropriately. And I'm not going to go into it in depth, but I believe that the connection between a plant-based diet or a vegan diet and climate change goes beyond just the methane gas. It becomes very evident to me as we look at the use of the earth's tillable land, and as we are clearing more and more rainforest, that we are having some more effect on global warming than just the methane gas. That is only one part of the whole problem there. So I was very concerned about if we continue to consume animal flesh, and including milk and eggs, at the rate that we are, that it would not be sustainable. And so that's part of the reason that I went down this avenue, and that was in the 90s. Now, my daughter became a vegan about this time, and I knew from my study of nutrition in my undergraduate work, and I have a degree in human environmental sciences that also prepared me to be certified as a home economics teacher. And so, and I love nutrition. And so that was something that I was a little concerned when she decided to become vegan. But as I looked at my studies and I asked some of my professors, they assured me that a diet that was based totally on plants is totally healthy. And so she was vegan. And so that really kind of piqued my interest in that too. And as I continued to kind of look at that, in the early 2000s, I started studying the health aspects of eating a plant-based diet. And I started including more plants into my diet and less meat and dairy and eggs. So one of the first steps that I had was to eliminate dairy. And part of that was that I was never been a huge milk drinker. If you grow up in the Midwest like I did, we really didn't eat a lot of cheese except for Velveeta. And it wasn't too hard to convince me that that wasn't necessarily a good, healthy food. And so that was pretty easy for me to eliminate dairy. And the next thing that I did was I eliminated animal products from our home. I stopped cooking with meat. And so when we were home, we ate a plant-based diet. And when we were away from home, then if my husband chose to eat, a regular standard American diet, he could, which he did for many years. And what I started doing is that I started then eliminating more and more of those animal products from my diet, even when we were away from home. And I finally got to a place that I said, you know what? If I'm going to eat a hamburger, I'm going to eat a good hamburger at one of our favorite restaurants. And so I started doing that about once a quarter. And so as you see, for me, it was one of those gradual things. But the first step was just to start looking at how can you incorporate more plants into your diet. And so by 2008, I was close to being 100% plant-based. And I say close to because I am not so picky that if I eat something, I'm going to question somebody to death about whether or not there's butter in it. And so that's kind of the path that I had on becoming a plant-based or a vegan eater.
Okay. And what kind of difficulties did you have to overcome? I mean, it can't have been all smooth sailing.
Yeah, the first one was my own personal taste. I grew up in the Midwest, like I told you. I loved bacon and sausage. I love barbecue. Never have cared for fried chicken. Sorry about all you fried chicken lovers. But I love those things. And probably one of the hardest things for me, I call them the breakfast meats. You know, those nice, salty, savory, kind of sweet tasting cured meats. And so those were kind of those difficult things for me to give up. And then the other things, one of the next ones, everybody knows, just the convenience, because you have to plan. Um, you know, I, I'm just like anybody else. If I'm traveling, I want to run into a 7-Eleven or whatever and grab a snack. And the next time you're in a 7-Eleven, look around and you say, okay, if you're looking at eating something that doesn't have meat or doesn't have dairy or doesn't have eggs in it, you end up eliminating an awful lot of food right away. A couple years ago, I helped my sister move from the Seattle area back to Independence. And we were on a time crunch because I am a teacher and I had to get back to school because the school year was about to start. And so we drove as much as we could. And lots of times we would just stop at convenience stores to eat. And it was very difficult, very difficult. Fortunately, a lot of them are carrying bananas and things like that. So convenience is another one. But now when my husband David and I take road trips, it's kind of this challenge. And I look ahead and I find places that we can eat vegan. And we found this wonderful little bistro in Salt Lake City that was called the Mark of the Bistro. No, the Mark of the Bistro. Yes, I think it was called the Mark of the Bistro. And it was at 666 State Street in Salt Lake City. And we love little experiences like that. And so before I head out on a long road trip, I'm looking for places that we can eat. And we use a couple of different apps. And then also, Susan knows this, but I'll share it with your viewers and your listeners too, is that I do a lot of dehydrating of food. And so when we head out on a road trip, I will have dehydrated vegan chili, and I've even developed a dehydrated vegan biscuits and gravy. And so we're stopping at roadside parks and rehydrating that with a little camp stove. So we kind of look at it as an adventure. One of the other challenges was it used to, especially when we lived in Missouri, it was a lot harder to get things like tofu and plant-based milks. And just about anywhere you go now, I can go to Safeway or Walmart and find a good variety of those types of things. And of course, another challenge is always other people's comments. My brother-in-law, he used to say to me, that would be a lot better if it had some bacon in it. And sometimes you get really tired of that. Sometimes you just want to eat. One of the biggest questions people will ask lots of times is, where do you get your protein? And again, if they really want to know, I'll be glad to share that with them. But honestly, those kind of things don't bother me very much because I believe my health and my husband's health is a lot better off because we have changed the way we eat. Sometimes cost is a concern, but again, some of my favorite meals are less expensive than your regular standard American diet. I love red beans and rice. And so again, if you're willing to do some planning and you're not depending on a lot of processed plant-based meals, then you can keep the cost down too. So those are some of the challenges that I've had.
So what would you say to someone who loves meat, and you used to love meat? Yeah. Mm-hmm. In fact, maybe you still love meat, you just don't eat it. But somebody who loves meat and doesn't think they can give it up. They don't, and they say, I can't do this.
I usually say, okay, don't. And I said, don't worry about it. If you have a reason, okay, I had a reason to give it up. But if you don't have a reason to give it up, I still think that there is so much benefit to eating more plants. There's some study that shows that in order to have a healthy gut microbiome, if you've done any study in there, which is a really good base foundation for your health, you should eat a variety of 30 plants a week. And sometimes people go like, when I tell people this, they're going like, I doubt if I eat 10. And I said, yeah, I know. And this is all plants, not just fruits and vegetables, but it's whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds. And to shoot for 30 plants, okay, you can eat 30 plants and still eat fried chicken, okay? And so that's a place to start. And then you just keep studying and you keep looking how you feel and just being aware of it. And again, if it's important for you to cut out all that meat, maybe you're starting to see that, yeah, you know what? If you start doing some research like I did and you start believing that the amount of animal products that we eat is actually detrimental to our climate, and if you care about that, maybe you'll start cutting it down. But I always say, just start eating more plants. And I always go, do it right now. If you've got an apple in the kitchen, go out and eat it. And so that's the place to start. And hopefully what will happen is that you'll start replacing some of those meals. Maybe you'll decide one, you've heard of meatless Mondays. If you start there, that every incremental change that you make not only makes a difference, I believe, a little tiny difference in climate change, but it also, every incremental change you make makes a difference in your health. Fiber is something that does not come from animal products at all. You will not get 1 gram of fiber from animal products, but you need fiber. And most Americans are deficient on fiber. And so if I start adding plants into my diet, it's going to improve my health. And so that's one of the things I say is just start adding more fruits and vegetables. Hopefully, and if you're interested, that bulk of food that you start adding will start pushing out some of the other unwanted calories. So that's my advice to most people.
Okay. So you're not one that says you have to be, plant-based all the way every day in order to really be a human being, right?
Absolutely not. And I just think that there are some people that they do a little bit of reading, and maybe they read some of my favorite books that I've read. Maybe they read China Study by T. Colin Campbell. I mean, there were some things in there that when I read it, I'm going like, I was kind of mad. It was like, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? Why didn't I ever really notice that it was, if we can keep our cholesterol lower, that not only is it good for our heart, but it's also good for my eyes and my vision. And there were some things that really motivated me. And so there's sometimes that people read things. There's a book I'm looking at right now on my shelf that's called How Not to Die by Dr. Greger. One of the first books I read was The Starch Solution. And so there's lots of books. And there's lots of people that they read those books or they watch a documentary, which there's a lot of them out there, and they go like, that's it. And they go to their kitchen and they clean everything out of their kitchen. And the next day they're plant-based. And I say all the power to you. If you can do that and you want to do that, that's great. I've got a ton of recipes. You can call me up and I will say, hey, I've got this great recipe. Try it here. And so absolutely not. I think that people can go about it at any pace they want. They can stop at any place they want. Maybe they just say, I want to eat 3 meals. I have a coworker at work. She's got 3 teenage children. And over the course of me working with her for 7 years and it's just talking about this, she's changed over their diet. So they are probably about 75% plant-based now. And her health has improved. Her children's health has improved. And so every little bit helps.
Okay. So what is one of your favorite vegan dishes?
Oh, well, I already mentioned it. I love red beans and rice. I could probably eat red beans and rice almost every day. But I also like variety. And if like I bring something different to potluck, a different dessert to potluck at church, because that's how I manage potlucks. I make sure we take lots of food. So that's one of my favorites. I have lots of others.
Besides red beans and rice, what's one of the simplest vegan dishes that a novice can make?
Most people like spaghetti. And so
Hmm.
I always suggest that you start out with spaghetti. And if you feel like you really just need that flavor of meat, there's a couple of products most people know about. There's Impossible, and there's also
You mean Impossible Burger?
yeah. And
Yeah.
so you can either buy it where it looks just like a little package of ground beef, or you can buy crumbles. And
Crumbles.
so you if you buy the package that looks like ground beef, you just use it like beef and you brown it. Susan, you do this all the time.
I
Um,
do.
by the way, folks, Susan makes this wonderful shepherd's pie for my husband and I at our potlucks. We have a potluck once a month, and she does that for us, and it's just wonderful. Um, but you can start with that if you want the flavor of the hamburger. And I will tell you, when like I said, I've been vegan pretty much since about 2008. My husband's only been totally vegan for about 4 or 5 years. And when he first started over, when he just first started, he would like to have the Impossible in his spaghetti or something like that. And now I'll hear him say things like, I didn't even miss it when you left it out of there. Um, I really like broccoli served this way. Oh, I like zucchini. And that's the other thing I tell people. If they're interested in changing over, let your taste change. They will eventually. And you don't have to be in a hurry. And
Mhm.
so those are some of the things that spaghetti is just a really good thing to start with. And the other thing I mentioned when we were talking about the terms, I try to do as much food as whole food as possible. Okay. And that doesn't mean that I'm just eating, an apple or a carrot and I'm not cooking it. I'm not a raw vegan, but I make choices. Like instead of choosing white rice, I'll choose brown rice. Instead of choosing regular white pasta, I will do the whole wheat pasta. And it's just a little bit of a change, but like I said, every little thing helps.
Okay. And that's because it is closer to the whole food, right?
Right. And it also has a little bit more fiber in it. Now, if you take and you compare whole grain, like a whole wheat pasta with regular pasta, it's not a huge amount, but it all adds up.
So, how would you summarize then your advice to people, given all that you've said? What would be just a quick summary of your advice as a nutritionist,
Eat more plants. That's it.
regardless of whatever else you eat?
Well, yeah. And I always think that we should be really looking at our foods and paying attention to how it makes us feel. And, and if I'm going to the doctor and they're saying, Sally, your cholesterol is way off the charts, then I think I need to take a little bit more serious action to it. I've heard lots of people say, if you're only making moderate changes in your diet, you can only expect moderate changes in your health. And and so I think that there's sometimes that you might have to be a little bit more aggressive. But most people, if they go overboard, they're not going to stick to it.
Well, I think that's one of the problems. People go all the way. I
Hmm.
think it's, all or nothing. And then they get frustrated and they can't keep it up.
Right.
They're not disciplined to go that way.
And the other thing that I always tell people too is that I think it's really important to really do your own research. Um, not I always say that I have two or three basic sources that I've followed. I've read their books, and 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 I go like, okay, this seems really solid. I've tried out their stuff. It lines up with my basic knowledge of nutrition, and so I I feel like because I have this foundation that when something comes along that's kind of shiny and says, okay, go over here, do this, let's eat cabbage soup for 15 days and you'll feel better. I'm going to look at it and say, does that really line up with
Mhm.
what I have come to believe. And it's not that I don't ever believe anything new, but if there's something new that comes along, I'm going to sit on it for a long time before I go gung ho on that.
Sure. Sure.
And so that's the other thing that I suggest to people. There are some really good documentaries out there, and there are some that are pretty solid, and that you can take them. And there's also a lot of documentaries out there on health. They've used a lot of scare tactics too, and they'll show you all the suffering animals and everything else. And and I heard something the other day that said that if you truly are doing this because of animals, you might have a better chance of changing over a lot faster. But lots of times what we do is we see those things, they pull at our heartstrings, they make us feel so sad. And doggone it, I'm not going to eat any more beef because, that cow looks so, sad. And it's just not a solid enough foundation to move forward, because you'll meet lots of challenges.
Yeah. And you'll backtrack a lot.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, people backtrack all the time, and you just go, I always like it. It says it is not so important what you've just done. It's what you do next. So if you had a Super Bowl party and you ate 25 chicken wings and you didn't really want to eat chicken, well, the next meal you don't have to eat chicken. I mean, that's just as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sally. I appreciate your taking the time to share that with us.
Sure.
And I look forward to more of your potluck dishes. You guys make excellent vegan. Yeah, excellent vegan lasagna, excellent vegan chili. Oh my gosh. Love your.
Did you like the vegan Mexican brownies on Sunday?
I did. Those were
good.
Wonderful. Yes.
Now, those are not as far on the health part of it as they are. But, I always think that sometimes vegan desserts are kind of just this little gateway for people into exploring a little bit more.
Sure. So. Sounds great to me. I always enjoy your desserts. Well, thank you. And thanks for bringing your creations to potluck so that we can try them.
Yeah. Anybody that's listening, come to Renton Congregation the second Sunday of the month, and I promise you I'll share some vegan meals with you.
And they are tasty. Thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. Thank you, Susan.